We're also continuing to regularly consult with national experts from the National Crime Agency, the NCA, and they continue to support us and provide both tactical and strategic advice for the case. I will now hand over to Becky, who will talk through in some more detail the investigation she's been leading from that senior investigating officer role. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this morning.
I've worked in the police now for 26 years and I've been a detective for the last 20 years. I've worked on the Force Major Investigation Team where you investigate homicides. But my passion really is for the area that I am in at the moment, which is covert policing. It's a real challenge to gather evidence in relation to these serious offences, and there's no better satisfaction of investigating those really high-end criminals that can be perceived to escape justice. And by putting together, the teams working all sorts of different tactics, you do get some real good satisfaction from the significant sentences that these type of criminals that are operating at the absolute high end of our society eventually get when they are taken to justice and sentenced at court.
She was immediately treated as a MISPA, and then on the Monday, the 30th of January, I was identified as the senior investigating officer. Those hypotheses have remained in place throughout, are reviewed regularly, as is normal with any SIO running a major investigation. This has been misconstrued in the press and said that was what I said. I said that was my main working hypothesis at that time, and that remains my main working hypothesis. At the minute, with the information that we have received and reviewed, there is not a single piece of information or evidence to suggest that there is any third-party involvement in this investigation. And that continues and will continue to do so until we have reviewed all the information received.
Hello all, and welcome back to Mind Juice. I know we have all seen these clips of Becky hundreds of times, but there's a particular reason and purpose I selected those segments for this episode, which, by the way, is going to be a big one. Huge. As I have some very strong and good revelations to share with you. I hope you're thirsty. There's plenty of mind juice in this one. We, as a community here, are getting closer to Nicola's truth. I can feel it. I can see it. So, we hear Becky's last statement. At the minute, with the information we have received and reviewed, there's not a single piece of information or evidence to suggest there's any third-party involvement in this investigation. And that continues, and will continue to do so until we have reviewed all the information received. Now, I believe we here at Mind Juice have presented enough already, legitimate information, evidence, if you want to call it that, to raise appropriate, serious questions that I believe indeed do deserve an answer. Emma in that picture, that ring, that needs answered. The CCTV released, and by who, and why was it manipulated? No police involvement. There's no CCTV of Nicola anywhere. Was she found in the reeds, or was she first observed floating down the middle of the river? Which is it? You get the point. I could go on, and not even to include the big aspects I have to add to it here today. Just wait. By the time this episode is over, with everything presented here at Mind Juice, this episode as well as everything previously, ask yourself, why is and has nothing been done? Or, pause for a second. Is it potentially being done behind the scenes? Is Becky's presence on this case in actuality to control the narrative, i.e. some dark connection with Paul or Emma, etc., something? Like I've kind of hinted at, I told you something's just wrong with Becky in the past. But to me, it's always been a puzzle to where, you get that one piece and you think it's the last one, you put it in and you're like, I'm pretty sure it fits, and you're not really certain. Then you go and you switch them out and then you put one in there and they go, yep, that one fits. Something's off with Becky, like I've said, but I'm not so sure it's necessarily in the bad light. Very well could be, but hear me out, okay? Or is she in fact on the case due to it being organized its nature as structure, the underbelly, which she and they most likely knew right off the bat. Why do I say that? They have intel. Paul Ansell, a Rothwell. I mean, she did bust an Ansell and a Rothwell in the past, right? Now, after making the previous episode, I recognized one of the points I made was the media. This idea where it can be controlled and manipulated. You know, in this case, we think the lady in red. We hear in one article how their dog stopped and briefly interacted, but yet the lady in red comes out later and said that's not true, that didn't happen. Right? And then there's one article that says Nicola was seen laughing and joking around. Then, of course, we all know recently, you know, Jason found Michael, and I'll discuss that today. I realize it was his mom, and Jason did comment and back that up. I was aware of that rumor before I made it, but I didn't see it in any official media. See, that's the thing. So I wasn't sure, but I was like, hey, if that's the truth, it'll very clearly shine through. And it did in the comments. It did. And I think that's beautiful, because to me, that's the truth, right? If it has that stronger support. I meant no disrespect to his mom, Joanne, whatsoever. And I apologize if she took anything, you know, that way. I am interested in her son's case. She deserves answers just as much as Nicola's family does. Let's not forget that. Then we have an article of a missing artifact, and then this coroner comes out, and then James Adeley fights back. The vulnerabilities were released by the police, not necessarily media, but, you know, Facebook, you get the point. And then we get an Emma interview here, an Emma interview there, everywhere an Emma interview. I mean, it was everywhere. The media hasn't always been accurate, on point with this case. In fact, it has muddied the waters. If you really think about it, it's called into more questions really than given answers or factual information. One source even targeted and attacked Becky for her poker dress. And then the identification speech, the police give Paul the forefront to rip Sky News and ITV News, shaming them. There's been a big war of media in this case, right? So, I take a step back, being personal with myself. I asked, genuinely, mind you, where, if I could have been influenced in some way regarding this case, have I been? Really pay attention, because how do we know what's true, right? Just look at articles, things change. Now, being from the U.S., considering this case, all the way back to last year before everything had happened, I can't say that I was 100% familiar with the state and culture of your guys' police over there, right? But being into this case, I studied, and of course I came across, you know, the cousin situation, the officer who suggested women just take a bus, and then I looked further into Lancashire constabulary and seen a lot of complaints and whatnot. And there's a known culture, serious culture with the Met Police and Scotland Yard having all these corrupt officers being arrested and whatnot, you know? There's a societal temperament towards the police in general, right? And I picked up on that, okay? So I think it's fair to say it kind of makes it easier to presume that such is happening everywhere, okay? You know, like the whole 23 idea, this confirmation thing of, you know, playing on the temperament of what everybody sees at the moment. And my question is what if such is being used and played to, taking advantage of? That is, whomever is behind this, Paul 100%, knowing full well the temperament of the public's attitude towards the police, it wouldn't be hard to get people speculating about them. I mean, look, it's true. I mean, we all did. We start speculating about them. So is it 100% warranted? Do they deserve that critique and that criticism and questions of type of corruption involvement? Or is that being the culture over there in the police? Is that, unbeknownst to all of us, affecting how we're approaching the Lancashire constabulary? If you understand what I'm saying. Okay? I'll have to be truthful. I'll raise my hand. I guess, yeah, sure. I think it would be fair to say that it may have a little bit, yes, I always maintain trying to be objective and honest, and I always do. I always take a step back like this right here. I'm willing to express humility. Maybe I've been wrong, because you have to, right? You always have to reassess. But in this case, really ask yourself, what makes you not trust them? Cutting out the temperament and cultural temperament of the UK at this time. Yes, of course, the working hypothesis. That doesn't really make much sense, right? Becky's attitude, right? Which I don't think she normally is the PR person. I mean, come on. She's a 26-year vet, manager of 2 departments, one being organized crime. I believe she came down to speak because the media narrative got so out of control. And that's what I'm saying is Paul has got someone with media levers, which is Emma. Okay? And I think they're also preying on this position to make the police look incompetent. Yes, their reviews stated that they needed to work on criminal reporting and stuff. They do. I'm not saying they're perfect. They're not. But I'm saying we have to be careful, right? You had the Garstang Road mess up by Becky as well. And my thing is like, yeah, that could be, like she didn't really pay attention to it. But what if because her focus is actually on a different angle on this case, but she can't obviously tell us that, right? So maybe that's why she doesn't have all those specifics down. I'm just saying it could be true, right? You always got to be objective with yourself. So I take a step back, considering the most recent episode, Psychic and Medium, which has been a huge ascending moment for me in understanding this case further. And I'll show in detail that here today, you'll see. But first, I want to exhibit and show a little evidence and proof to back up what it is I'm all babbling on about here now, okay? Is this actually an official organized crime? I.e. Paul, Jason? We don't know all of the players, although I could go on. Emma. But hear me out. Let's reflect back to the intro piece with Mr. Lawson. You noticed there in the intro clip at the very beginning, Peter Lawson references continually working to consult with national crime experts, the NCA, and that they, the official government organization of the UK, continue to support us and provide tactical and strategic advice for the case. Tactical meaning relating to or constituting actions carefully planned to gain a specific military end. Okay? And then he says, I will now hand over to Becky, who will talk through in some more detail the investigation she has been leading from that SIO role. Becky then goes on to say the hypothesis has remained in place throughout, reviewed regularly, as is normal for any senior investigating officer running a major investigation. So as a high-risk MISPER case of a missing mom, which is Nikki Bulley in this case, is that considered running a major investigation? Right? Now check this out. The NCA, the National Crime Agency. Remember, Peter Lawson in the beginning mentioned that they were receiving great support and work with the NCA. He said they continue to provide tactical and strategic advice to the case. Okay, so you look into the NCA a little bit. Headlines: protecting the public from serious and organized crime. Okay, just to kind of show you here, NCA officers work at the forefront of law enforcement, building the best possible intelligence pictures of serious and organized crime threats, relentlessly pursuing the most serious and dangerous offenders, and developing and delivering specialist capabilities on behalf of law enforcement and other partners. So that's kind of what Lawson is insinuating. Developing and delivering specialist capabilities on behalf of law enforcement and other partners. Okay? Enhancing intelligence picture of serious and organized crime. Investigating and disrupting the high risk of serious and organized criminals. Providing specialist capabilities to law enforcement. You go into the mission statement. The National Crime Agency leads the UK's fight to cut serious and organized crime, protecting the public by targeting and pursuing those criminals who pose the greatest risk to the UK. We lead the UK's response locally, regionally, and nationally to reduce the impact of serious and organized crime. And I know everybody's going like, yeah, dude, you said that 3 times. Sorry, I had to beat it home. Okay. Remember, Lawson referenced them helping this case, giving advice, tactical and strategic support in this case. Becky specializes in high-profile organized crime. I mean, that's why she's on this case. And the thing is, it's like, oh, why are you revealing this then? This could be dangerous. Because I think it's appropriate for me to be fair, because I may have painted them in a bad light unintentionally. There could be still a police officer involved. In fact, there very likely could be. But I'm saying it's also important to take a step back, understanding how this media has really twisted the narrative, to really assess whether or not, what is there to prove the police part, right? So that's what I'm doing. I hear this Lawson comment, I look into it, I'm like, okay, that makes more sense as to why Becky's on the case, right? And then, if we look over back the DCI case that Becky Smith was in charge of in 2018, so 5 years ago, gang who flooded Blackpool with Class A drugs, jailed for more than a century. Okay, I don't need to get all the way into the details, but they got charged for drugs. This here is Mark Ansell right here. This is Mark Ansell, and then this is James Rothwell. James Rothwell, Mark Ansell, which is weird to me because James Rothwell, okay, I saw he was 28 years old, okay, at the time of this, which is 2018, which would make him 33 today in 2023, which is odd because Jason's 33. So they can't really be brothers unless they're twins. Or they have like a half mom or something. Or they're cousins. You get what I'm saying? This is Mark Ansell. Okay. This guy was charged and convicted of like rape. Don't need to get all the way into it, but these guys weren't, as far as I know. But just to kind of show you the culture of what this group was affiliated with: drugs, money, smuggling, all different types of stuff. I'm not getting all the way into it, okay? But Becky was the DCI Rebecca Smith of the Blackpool Police said, "I'm happy with the significant sentences issued, and the result should send a clear message to the other criminal gangs engaging in similar activity that this will not be tolerated. This type of criminal activity is very sophisticated and takes a lot of time to investigate and bring to court, but we continue to work tirelessly to dismantle such groups as the Carlos Gang and make our streets safer places to be and live." Nimbly and his associates were prolific in the resort. So this is Nimbly, like the leader of all these dudes. Flooding the seaside town with illicit drugs. It is not acceptable that gang leaders are getting rich out of someone else's misery. DCI, Rebecca Smith. So, there is a history of Rebecca Smith working in organized crime with Ansell-Rothwell. In the Nicola Bulley case, Paul Ansell, his, I believe, brother, is the partner of the lady missing. This guy's half-brother, twin, or cousin, not really sure now, because they're the same age, is the psychic whom found her. Rothwell Ansell, Becky Smith SIO, NCA providing tactical and strategic advice. They have a working hypothesis. Maybe they just can't expose or evolve or share what progress they're making, right? Again, I want to be clear. I agree. The police have not handled this case well at all. On the PR front, that is. Remember, that's all we really can say we know. I believe, what I can tell, there is something wrong with the access and the flow of media in this case, story, narrative. Follow me, please. What I am saying is that this is likely by design. They may be playing into the social temperament of corrupt policing. Didn't Paul and Emma, I believe, weren't they the ones who called in and requested Faulding to join the search in the first place? Yet, remember, Paul never told Faulding about the vulnerabilities, which Faulding was shocked about himself, not knowing such at the time. He commented on such in numerous sources and interviews. There's two things I want to show you here to kind of show you this media magic, all right? Manchester Evening News. The underwater forensics expert went on to question if there is any other information being withheld by the police. Do they know something else, again, that they are not telling us? I think so, that it's an organized crime. He mused. Is there another snippet of information here that actually we don't know? Again, yes, organized crime. Since leaving the search last Wednesday, Mr. Faulding has offered to return and use his expertise for a land search, but he said he hasn't heard anything from the police. He said, my offer is open to Lancashire police, but I've had no communication with Lancs police since we left. Our phone has been quiet. I'm not ringing them because I don't want to interfere, but we have had no contact at all. That's interesting to me because the idea is that he was removed from the expert list. Obviously, there was a disconnect there, right? Then we take a glance at this article very quickly, keeping in mind the media's slanting and magic here. Hits back after removal from NCA expert list. Remember this? I mentioned that before, to me, is the biggest red flag that he got put on this NCA expert list, from which I initially interpreted as by the police, but now I'm not so sure. Mr. Faulding said SGI's operational ability, integrity, and professional search and rescue capabilities are not in question in these matters. This is important, right? Are not in question, because I've always said, well, what did he do wrong, okay? A diving expert who was drafted into the search for Nikki Bulley has hit back after they were reportedly taken off the National Crime Agency's expert list, okay? Peter Faulding's Specialist Group International SGI was suspended last week while a review is carried out. Law enforcement sources told the Times the team was recruited by the Inskip mom's family. The team was recruited by the Inskip mom's family. In my opinion, it could be Louise, Ernie, Dot, or in my opinion, Paul, Emma, right? It could be her parents too, to help find her 10 days after she went missing on January 27th. SGI conducted a series of underwater searches across 3 days. They scanned a 3-mile stretch of the river between St. Michael's-on-Wye and Cartford Bridge using sonar equipment he described as state-of-the-art, and I'll show you how state-of-the-art it is here in a bit. And Mr. Faulding asserted he would find the 45-year-old as she was in the river, but they failed to find her body, which was spotted by walkers last Sunday, the 23 days after her disappearance. Jason Rothwell. Now law enforcement sources have confirmed the SGI has been suspended. Law enforcement sources have confirmed the SGI has been suspended while a review is carried out to determine if it should return. Law enforcement sources have confirmed. That doesn't mean that they did it, right? The NCA's expert advisor database, which is used to identify the source experts helpful to law enforcement investigations, listed Mr. Faulding as a registered search expert. Its database covers a broad range of expertise in more than 24 areas, including psychiatrists, accountants, and forensic artists. That's a good picture. Responding to yesterday's reports, Mr. Faulding posted a statement on SGI's Facebook page. It read, "There are several reports in the media today based on a story that first appeared in the Times. The Times story is based on information confirmed to the paper by law enforcement sources. The story pertains to a confidential matter between SGI and the National Crime Agency." So why is law enforcement commenting on it, right? That's what's weird there. "We are not at liberty to comment." This is Peter Faulding. "We are not at liberty to comment on matters pertaining to the expert advisors database at this time or the reported review of SGI's inclusion on the database, except to state that SGI's operational ability, integrity, and professional search and rescue capabilities are not in question in these matters." That's extremely important, okay? "We are proud of our record in the specialist search and rescue operations conducted over many decades, during which we have worked with police departments and other agencies to the high standards expected of nationally recognized specialists. I would ask you all not to speculate or pass blame on any further." I apologize, that might be... But see, I took that more as it was against the police, right? I'm not going to read that, but here, listen to this. "A National Crime Agency spokesperson told the Times that it does not employ, endorse, or credit experts on its advisor database." So technically, there's no experts list. It's an idea. It's a list of people they usually call. There's no such thing as an experts list, right? You can call the list of people they typically call that if you'd like to, but there's nothing fancy like a golden book that keeps these names, right? Never thought there was. You get the point. A spokesperson continued, the database is subject to continual review, and its purpose is to maintain a list of expertise UK law enforcement can draw upon when required. We proactively seek feedback from customers regarding experts' performance and contribution. The monitoring of performance equally applies to individuals and organizations who become involved in investigations without NCA engagement. Here's my thing. Remember it said above that he was brought in by Nicola Bulley's family, who are the customers, right? Because they weren't hired by the police, right? And he said that he was doing it free of charge, but he didn't come in under the police's request. It was per Nicola's family. We proactively seek feedback from customers regarding expert performance and contribution. Now, in my opinion, what I read this as, maybe it's not so much the police slanting him. Maybe it's Paul and Emma, the customers, who gave him a bad review. And by default, what do you do every time? You hold a review. It doesn't mean that there's actually bad there. There's a search, and eventually, if there's no finding, you move on, right? And I think that's what he's kind of reiterating here, but he can't speak on it at this time, right? Peter Faulding, that is. Okay? Last week, Mr. Faulding had called criticism he received after Nicola's body was discovered unfair, and it wasn't fair for him to be made the fall guy. And he was. But by who? The media. The 60-year-old denied giving her family false hope after insisting multiple times during his search that she was not in the river. The 60-year-old denied giving her family false hope. So is there a claim that he gave them false hope? That's what I'm saying. Paul and Emma are going to complain that he gave their family false hope. This is going to launch a review. They go through the ABCs of the review, determine, okay, something else is at play here. And then he's green lit. I hope you're following me. Okay? He explained the team was tasked with searching the non-tidal part of the river, which past the bench where Nicola's phone was found. They used high-frequency side-scan scanner to search the riverbed and categorically confirmed Nicola was not there. Remember, why do we believe Faulding was opposite the police? We heard he was removed from the expert list, nixed from the registry, etc. Check this out. Now, I want to be clear. Let's remain respectful with this information, please, and just appreciate what it means. This is a Facebook group and chat that I received from a awesome subscriber, and I think it contains some valuable insight, right? And further confirms the point I'm trying to get across here today. Now, apparently in April of 2023, just last month, SGI and Peter Faulding were involved in the recovery of another missing person over in Surrey. I hope I said that right. And I quote, Peter Faulding recovers vital evidence on the Scott Wilkinson murder investigation in Walton, Surrey. Credit to Surrey police for a thorough investigator that brought the killers to justice. There's a full documentary on YouTube. I have not watched that, but I'm sure it would be good. Now, say what now? How? Working with police again? I thought. Let's look at this brief exchange between this individual, and please, let's be respectful again. She doesn't deserve any criticism. It's just a comment she makes that I think are important. SGI, and then Peter Faulding. It says a lot, in my opinion. All right, so we have the individual here. If you look over to the right. Fantastic work, SGI. Thumbs up. Does this mean police have reinstated your team? Question mark. SGI. Our team continues doing police work. Business as usual. Thumbs up. The individual responds, SGI, thank goodness. When did they reinstate you? So pleased that they saw sense. Which is interesting, because after she makes the first comment, they respond and say, continues doing police work. Business as usual. She presses that issue again. When did they reinstate you? So pleased they saw sense. Remember, this was SGI, right? The founder of SGI, Peter Faulding, okay? And I'll show you here This is a blue check mark, which shows that this is his official page. Yes, it's him. Let's not go into that, please. He says, "We have never been removed from police work at all. The story was spun." See? That's why I went over what I went over a little bit earlier. You've got to be kidding me. Right? This is what led me down to looking further, which, like I said, I've already presented and showed you. The narrative may not be as spun by the police as we perceive, yet more so by those behind this whole scheme. Paul, Emma, the media connection to, was it Emma's grandfather? Don't quote me on that. The BBC, right? And then you think of the one news channel, they call them Sly News, which is Sky News, but there's all these little jabs at each other, right? And making the police most likely punch holes in their walls behind closed doors for, if I am accurate with this, they cannot speak. They're doing an investigation, right? Imagine how shitty that would be. All the critique, no ability to respond. Again, I'm not pulling a 180 on all of you and saying the Lancashire constabulary are spick and span, polished clean. No. There's still corruption, obviously. The stats show that. I don't know. There very likely could be some sort of corruption or blackmail going on with a specific officer, right? Like I've suggested. But to be fair, considering and showing this media spinning, it just as likely could be this way as well, right? To me, I have explored every avenue that I know of at this point, not saying there's another one, right? There could be. For Nicola's truth. That is what this is all about, to ensure that she, Nicola, Nikki, Jane Bulley, her 2 daughters, get the justice and appropriate scope of investigation they deserve. In fact, we all would deserve if in the same situation, right? With that said, if you're still with me, hold on. Now I'm about to drop a bunch of mind darts. Here we go. So who's behind the media? Could it be a police extension, or is it a more organized, complex type of plan, crime that thus takes more digging and extensive investigation to ensure everyone involved is covered and targeted? Let's hope this is the case, and not that they, in fact, completely flubbed up in the beginning. But remember, in her specialist video, Becky said her biggest passion is getting those with the perspective that they have escaped, which would be Paul and Emma. Well, maybe not. Hopefully I've caused a little concern their way. But let's for a moment give Becky the benefit of the doubt, right? Was it Paul, Emma, that created this image of Faulding in the media then? It makes more sense to me than does the police. I mean, there's almost too bold and in-your-face corruption, right? Like, I always ask myself that when Becky says these things, like, it's too obvious. Like, it really can't be that turn, can it? Here, Peter Faulding's Facebook page. Look, 3 days ago, it's probably been 4 or 5 by the time this comes out, this picture shows footprints on the riverbed from our side scan sonar on a recent training exercise. This image is looking directly down across the width of the river. The footprints are from the team walking in the river, and then sonar to show the intricate detail we can see when searching for missing persons. This is the Scott Wilkinson case that he just did in April, right? Yes, I realize this is not the Nicola Bulley case. The water's more muddy. It's got more debris. I don't want to hear any of that, okay? That's not the point here. But I'll be damned. Can you believe how clear those shots are? Like, holy smokes. I honestly certainly did not realize how crystal clear the potential technology was and could be. Like, that's mind-blowing, right? Again, not the same body of water. Don't get all bent out of shape, okay? Was Faulding brought in and encouraged by Paul and Emma in attempts to wedge the media angle between him and the police, which hence removing it from the expert list to build up the drama, when he certainly was not, apparently. I mean, I fell for it, right? So I then realized, to switch gears, this whole Ansell-Rothwell connection is almost becoming too coincidental, odd, off. Not to mention, a lot of people said he's from Oldham. That's approximately 50 miles away from both or either St. Michael's and Preston, Michael Brooks. And we know his mom found him, okay? Say what now? It's kind of odd to be 50 miles away, yet on the 23rd day being called to find two people from that distance, right? Interesting, okay? I'll address the Michael Brooks and Rothwell angle here in a second. Trust me, you want to stick around for that. First, I received this here. Again, let's be respectful as to the names. Nikki's sister, Louise, to show up here. She is not the point here. It's the name connection. So let's please be fair and not come down on her for that, okay? I have blurred the individual's picture out and her first name out of respect of privacy, okay? Now, I know people can go find it, but did as much as I could. Right? But look, a Rothwell updated her profile picture, of which Louise Cunningham, who is Nikki's sister, comments on this Rothwell lady updating her profile picture. You look beautiful using her name, XX. Rothwell lady responds, Louise Cunningham, thank you. I was a bit green this morning, ha ha ha. The green being the drinks that they're drinking, right? I'm not asking you to look at the intricacies of, who it is. Oh my gosh, it's Louise. No. The chief point is that I want to stress, again, is not to jumpstart all this speculation, okay? It's beyond the point and scope of what I'm trying to highlight. Please. Here you have the Rothwell name being connected, at least associated with, familiar in a different context, with relationship to Nikki, her sister this time. Okay? Then you have Mark Ansell and James Rothwell being busted 5 years ago in a Class A drug ring involving rape and all this type of corruption, okay? SIO Becky Smith. Then we get to Nicola's case, wherein Paul Ansell is the partner of the missing individual, and Jason Rothwell, the psychic, shows up to find her despite all the extensive police searching. To me, that sounded like Becky. That's funny. That signals 3 separate and apart instances wherein the Rothwell Ansell name, yes, Nikki's sister is different, but it's affiliated within the immediate family pertaining to Nicola, okay? 3 separate and apart instances. Really consider that. Is it just a coincidence? Could be. Now, I'm not saying this is truth. What I'm saying is it becomes more intriguing the more you get. I know some people share last names and it doesn't always mean anything. That's true. But it is a small village and a close-knit amount of people. My question is how prevalent is it for an Ansell and a Rothwell to get together and drink a cup of coffee or join each other for church, or you get what I'm saying? But this is 3 instances. This is far too much Rothwell Ansell overlap for me to feel comfortable with. So this is why I've started to go this angle, right? Not to mention the actual facts surrounding the narrative. It simply doesn't make sense, legitimately, from start to finish. So, if we take this Ansell-Rothwell sprinkled on top of all that, Becky, serious organized crime, 26-year vet, seems to make much more plausible sense. Again, I'm not stating this is it. I'm stating, it makes the most sense, honestly. Remember, she's a cop, a high-up detective. She can say anything she wants to the public. It's her investigation. And to protect the integrity at all else, sometimes image goes through temporary hailstorm. Fingers crossed this is true and actually happening. The inquest will really show and tell the truth here, but I'll promise you one thing. Now that I got an honest perspectives that continue to evolve, how they handle the remainder of this case should really iron things out. If it is the media's slanting, i.e. Paul and Emma, playing off of the societal temperament of corrupt police, making them look incompetent, etc. Then, this either means one of two things. Becky is rightfully assigned to the case, given her expertise in the area of organized and serious crime. They're working on it as we speak. Or, this maybe became prevalent later on, over time. However, given that they fixated too much on the river in the beginning, they didn't gather and collect the necessary evidence in the initial stages. Be hard to do so now. I mean, they did apparently return her Mercedes keys to her. Or, wait, that's what Paul's friend says, according to Grizzly. I don't trust any media anymore, and that's not a slight at anybody. Have I not shown that here today? Well, who do you trust? Seriously. I mean, really? Let's just hope it's not the let's toss it under the rug bit. It'll make us look bad. Now, if I can do anything about it, I will never let it rest. If, in fact, things turn out to be unknown, undetermined, any of that crap, I believe there is enough, in fact, too much, in-your-face, legitimate inquiry that needs to be done and answered. That her family deserves. That, if dismissed, should warrant a larger stand. Come hell or high water, if that inquest comes across as unknown or undetermined, I'm sorry, not sorry. I will have only just begun my quest for Nicola's truth. Mark my words. But let's hope everything is going the right way. If not, who knows? Maybe I can and will hit up my college roommate who works at the San Francisco Times and see if I can ratchet up the pressure or exposure. You never know. I wouldn't put it past me. Or maybe we could get on one of the U.S. stations to help expose Dateline 2020. I mean, Laura over there at Crime Analyst did do great work with them for the Gabby Petito case. Interesting possibilities, right? I apologize. I digress. I just wanted to whip it out there quick. Regardless, I'm just getting started. One thing that's become very clear to me. I actually have proof and evidence something is off. Thank you for the ring concealment bit, Emma. Good call. My eyes don't consider explanations. They are true to what is observed. Marsh Hall Farm? I'll stop there. With that said, before I continue, I stress that if anyone wants to reach out to me officially, I will remain open and confidential. The truth is what matters to me. That's it. So if it's some message about you should move on or some threat mumbo jumbo, save it. I have no interest and will immediately become numb and cold to anything said. No, it's not that I don't care. I'm all hell-bent on my own mission. Again, I have seen with my own eyes, shit is whack here. Apologize for the expression. I always reassess the truth. Let's be real. I live halfway across the world. Where I and we are at now with this case, consider that. I'm onto something. The wool is not being pulled over these eyes. Maybe I've had it shaded a few times, but I haven't wandered or wavered too much now, have I? Paul, that's a question to you. Emma, or you. By the way, I'm still curious as to your idea of creating a GoFundMe so early on, when she was still missing, in which you stated was for resources, yet Faulding said he was free of charge, and you were quick to say that you were wrong. That still don't make sense. So the media is your role and your bit. You might as well milk it for what it's worth too, eh? I personally prefer actresses whom play the role wherein it's hard to tell their character apart from who they really are. You should probably brush up on that. Beauty is only skin deep. Karma does not favor bad people, nor their ill-advised intentions, just so you know. The good will eventually triumph. If not on this earth, it's an unsurmountable burden that will shadow your soul for eternity, whether you like it or not. Now, let's flip the switch, transitioning over and into Jason Rothwell, the psychic and medium, who I talked about last episode. That episode received a direct response and comment, lengthy, from none other than the man himself. Let's take a look at it. As we move into this segment, which I believe does add new legitimate evidence and insight into the case, Becky, if you are listening, sincerely, let me show you what I have. But first, 2 brief snippets for context, which come into play as we discuss the response. Stay with me.
We also should explain that it's a lot more complicated than simply finding a spirit and having a communication with them. There are natural laws that need to be obeyed. There are various numerological and planetary alignments that have to be considered. I'm not saying they play a major part, but they have to be considered.
Extensive search, nothing found. 23rd day you happened to cross each and both of them. Yet you were not assisting or working with either Paul and or Becky and the Lancashire police in this case. You're simply on a stroll and the numbers just align. Now, it was a full moon when Michael Brooks was found, and when Nicola was found was a day or 2 from a full moon. So when you say need to be considered, not very important, but more so close enough, right? Me just highlighting the TikTok of Jason where he mentions numerology and planetary alignments, something to be considered, right? Then I should have clipped my last video where I had made a comment about the moons, right? Hold that for later. I just wanted to give that for context, okay? So here, speaking of that last video, Psychic and Medium, where I really dove into Jason and analyzed, right? Please go watch that if you haven't. It would definitely help this piece. If not, that's cool. Just watch this, follow along. And I know it's him because just by the tone and everything that he says, it's him, right? And you'll agree with me. If you're kind of familiar with my last video and how he works, right? You'll agree, okay? But it's striking to me. There's only 4 upvotes on this, and there's so much incredible, powerful information in here. I don't think he realized I was gonna flip the switch and maybe consider that this case didn't have a corrupt police officer, or maybe it's not so much the police, right? And I'll get into that as we go, right? So I'm gonna read through this completely, straight through, not interruption. And then I'm going to point out and expand upon certain things that I think are very critical, right? Yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and read through that. First, I'm going to say after I read through it, I was a bit surprised. I appreciate him responding, and I have much respect for how he responded. It's cool to see that we can have an adult conversation. Because I did kind of, critique a few things and ask some really hard questions. So for him to stay composed and respond in such a even-toned manner was good to see. However, again, I think that's because he's under the impression that I think the police are in on it, right? And like I said, I'll get into that. Also, I was a little bit chilled, like a Joker grinning over in the corner. Not me, him, writing this. But I saw right through it. It motivated me, right? And you'll see as we go. Now, this is very technical. It is not a waste of your time. I'm going to do my best to try to explain it. There's case-changing information in here. Okay? So, Becky, please, I hope you hear this or somebody can get this to you. This is huge. This is the man who found Nicola, okay? And I found some anomalies and discrepancies here, all right? So I'm going to read through it now. All right. Jason Rothwell, 3 days ago, in response to my video. I would just make a note here of thanking Mind Juice for asking my permission to use my content. I watched the whole thing. There are many things mentioned or questions posed that I could explain further, i.e. use of the word case, indeed, prior to actually going that day to St. Michael's. I sat with the essence of Nicola Bulley for some days, getting to know her, understand her, share her thoughts, emotions, etc., viewing events prior to her passing. But these things are hard for people to understand, hence I don't dwell on it too long. I also don't share it openly as an incredibly emotive topic. You come to know the person at a deeper level, and it causes me to feel a serious sense of loss, even grief, to which in many ways I do not feel entitled. I also would like to thank you for being polite and respectful for my beliefs while trying to obviously float some difficult questions. Thoughts. You commented on the moon that is incredibly significant, as one thing I notice with these situations, the moon someone goes missing under tends to have a correlating moon under which they are then found, usually a waning gibbous. They also tend to have a set count between ellipses. The day Nicola Bulley was found, and the reason I went that day was specifically because the moon moved into Pisces. The day I was approached by a friend to get involved in this situation, the Nicola Bulley case, 2 of my fish deceased at the same moment. For seemingly no reason, I took it to mean that Pisces would be significant. Some further down mention Rochelle, and while I would never wish to demean another person's work, drawing off trees, reeds, banks, and rivers is not exactly what I personally go off of in this case. The signs and symbols that led me to the location were seemingly insignificant, but incredibly important. A flight of starlings, a pig, a rose door, a green van, a shell to be found in an odd place, the song of a dead rabbit, etc., much like Macbeth. Macbeth hath naught to fear, to great Burnham wood, to hide disdain, hill does come against. I would just mention, i.e., M.B. is in Michael Brooks, his mom found him herself, as I stated, and has been misrepresented in the media. I assisted, meaning I gave an indication to a time and place. It was his mother herself who found him, and I have never claimed otherwise. In most missing person cases I have been involved in, 9 thus far, it is someone connected to the person whom has then found them. Directed usually over the phone by myself. In this case, I did not have that luxury, and thus accepted I would have to personally go and do what was needed. But let me just say simply thank you for asking me for permission, and thank you for your politeness. You're welcome. I appreciate your handling of it as well, if it's authentic, right? And what do I mean by that? My first thought was practically what killed the fish, okay? And I'll get into that. My next thought was, man, I was awfully hard on you in a few instances and really called into questions. And that you didn't seem to take that none of that bothered you. So I said when I was surprised, I kind of thought there would be a little bit more of a visceral, I was shocked. To me, it's more about what he didn't say than what he did say in this response. However, there are some very critical things in this response, right? And I think he felt like he had to respond for one purpose, and that's to clarify this Michael Brooks thing, right? Because that can't be getting any further looked into, right? Yeah, but I still can't believe how many people have seen this. But right, as you go through it, you can tell it's Jason, right? If you've watched my other video, TikTok, like, it says it's him. This is his long response, the way he words things, how he speaks. It's definitely him, okay? Now, the way I do things and my persistence for truth in this case on Nicola has always been under the philosophy of being a good man over being a nice guy. So what does that mean? It's when my morals and principles are put up against the wall, I tend to stand strong and maintain objectivity because that's the right thing to do, right? Where sometimes people get into a situation, or like someone like Jason who found her speaks to them, they're going to just soak up that attention and become snowed by it, right? They become a nice, oh yeah, thanks for responding, and they kind of lose that ability to be critical. They go under the spell, so to say, right? Kind of like how Emma's used with all the interviews. The same thing. She's pretty, no one would ever guess, no one ever, good. But you can't let that detour you. So again, I approach this with being a good man. So Jason, I'm not trying to start any beef, but thank you for responding. I now proceed to be a good man from my perspective and analyze what you say in regards to the facts. Because for me, this is about Nicola's truth. Okay? So again, thank you. The first thing that I want to pinpoint, okay, that threw me off. Well, the major thing is what killed the fish, okay? But the first thing that I want to point out, and bear with me, I'm not doing any of this scripted. I'm doing it straight off my thought. And if I explain things technically, don't think I'm trying to preach to you, as in I know this, you don't. It's more of a way to help me get into the flow of my thoughts and get to the punch of what I'm trying to show you, okay? So bear with me. This is a complex situation to discuss or explain, all right? Here, this right here, okay? Yes, I mean, this is all like fluff, okay? But here, you, as in me, in my last video, like I showed you before we started this, you commented on the moon, and he says, and that is incredibly significant as one thing I notice with these situations, Michael Brooks, Nicola Bulley, missing person cases, the moon someone goes missing under tends to have a correlating moon under which they are then found. Usually a waning gibbous. Okay? They also tend to have a set count between ellipses. The day Nicola Bulley was found, and the reason I went that day was specifically because the moon moved into Pisces. The moon moved into Pisces. That's a problem. Okay? And let me explain. The Earth orbits the sun, and the moon orbits the Earth. In astrology, there are 12 zodiac signs based upon the position of the Earth as it completes one calendar year, 365 days around the sun, right? One cycle. Based on that position of the Earth, you can see different stars. That's where you move across each zodiac. 12, January, February, right? You get it. The moon has 8 phases, which is based on roughly a 27-day lunar calendar. So if you were to go into a bookstore, you're going to see a lunar calendar moon phase book next to an astrology one, or even have a chapter of each in each other. They're from the same subject, the same discipline, right? However, they operate off of different measurements and calculations, all right? The moon moved into Pisces. The moon doesn't move into Pisces, okay? And he says usually a waning gibbous, and I'll explain this. Just bear with me. All right, so I go ahead and I look. The day Nicola went missing, okay? The day Nicola went missing, January 27th, the moon was a waxing crescent, okay? And waxing means the moon's getting bigger, and waning means the moon's getting smaller through its phases, okay? So the day she went missing, the moon was a waxing crescent. The day she was found was a waning crescent, okay? So I'm going to show you a graph of the different lunar moon cycles here. The top right is the waning gibbous. This is what Jason is suggesting, which they are then found. Usually a waning gibbous, okay, is on the far right. In Nicola's case, if we go down to the bottom left, she went missing on a waxing crescent. She was found on a waning crescent, just above it, okay? He says One thing I noticed in these situations, the moon someone goes missing under tends to have a correlating moon under which they are then found. Again, waxing crescent missing, waning crescent found. Those aren't correlating moons. Those are completely opposite. Okay? And I'm going to put pictures on the screen to show you the dates in the history. And the moon, phases of the moon doesn't matter where you are positioned on the earth. So if I'm in the United States and you're in the UK, we're all going to see the same phase of the moon, right? However, someone in the US versus someone in the UK is going to see different star constellations, the astrology, the zodiac representations. Why? The moon's relationship to Earth is different than the Earth's relationship with the constellations up above, right? And the upper celestial bodies, okay? Hope I'm not losing you, right? So, if we look at what he says to the facts of when Nicola went missing and she was found, they're on the opposite side of the spectrum and don't correlate, but are in fact absolutely opposite. So just for a moment, let's look at Michael Brooks. He went missing on January 14th, 2018. There was a waning crescent. He was found on February 6th. There was a waning gibbous. So, I guess we can say, out of the 4 different scenarios, Nicola missing, then found. Michael Brooks, missing, then found. Those 4 instances. There's a waning gibbous moon, 1 time out of the 4, and that was Michael Brooks was found. The other 3 constitute waxing crescent, waning crescent, waning crescent. So 3 out of the 4 aren't gibbous but crescent. So it wouldn't be usually a waning gibbous moon, okay? That doesn't match the facts. They also have a set count between ellipses. I don't really care about that. But you see, I'm starting to show like, that doesn't make sense, all right? So the moon moved into Pisces, right? I'm going to explain this real quick. I have this explanation. Hold on for just a second. Okay. What is astrology in simple terms? Astrology is a method of predicting mundane events based upon the assumption that the celestial bodies, particularly the planets and the stars, considered in their arbitrary combinations or configurations called constellations, in some way either determine or indicate changes in the sublunar world. What is the sublunar world? Those within the moon's orbit and subject to its influence. Okay? So, in astrology, as the larger context, because the lunar calendar of the moon is much smaller, the moon represents the inner world, our emotions, and what we need in order to feel safe. So when each zodiac sign learns how to work with the moon cycle, they can better understand this powerful natural satellite that's orbiting Earth. Okay? The moon is a satellite that orbits Earth. Astrology and the constellations is not a satellite that orbits Earth. They're completely different. Okay? And it says, so when each zodiac sign learns independently, so if I'm, let's say, Sagittarius, if I learn, then I can adapt that to me being a Sagittarius. That's how it works. It's not it's not based on, I hope that makes sense, right? And I'll explain that a little bit clearer here. If we take a look over at this, okay? When we dive deeper and look into the astrology of each moon phase, we unlock a powerful aspect of our birth chart, kind of like I was saying. And finding out our natal moon sign can give great insight into who you are as a person. In astrology, the moon represents the inner world, our emotions, and what we need in order to feel safe. So when each zodiac sign learns how to work with the moon cycle, they can better understand this powerful natural satellite that's orbiting Earth. Here's what you need to know to plan your own moon phase calendar. And I apologize for repeating myself. I didn't realize I had that note twice. So what do moon phases mean in astrology? When the moon enters a new phase, remember, one of the 8, okay? Separate and apart, there's 12 zodiac signs. So they work on different time measurements, okay? 8 phases of the moon, 12 zodiacs. It takes 27 days for the moon to orbit the Earth and 365 days for the Earth to rotate the sun. 365 degree bit of change versus 27, right? They're operating on different gears, right? The moon itself doesn't actually change shape. Instead, the position of the sun and moon causes a change in appearances as the moon orbits the Earth and has a different amount of sunlight cast upon it. Following a new moon, totally dark, the moon will grow in appearance, waxing, until it reaches the full moon phase. From there, the moon will appear to lessen until it turns into another new moon, waning. In astrology, the phases of the moon are amplified in meaning with the astrological shifts. Every 29 and a half days, approximately, the moon completes a full lunar cycle that is around the Earth one time, meaning that about every 3.7 days we have a new moon phase, and every one of the 8, and every 2.5 days we have a new moon sign. The equation for both of these would be 29 and a half days in the lunar cycle being divided by 8 moon phases. Okay, you get the point. There are 8 lunar phases made up of 4 primary and 4 secondary phases. As a note, these do not have a direct correlation to the astrological moon signs, as there are 12 signs and only 8 phases. So the sign associated to each phase differs from month to month. As you know, there's 12 months. February has 28 days. Every 4th year that there's a leap year, there's 29. Some months have 30, some have 31. Right? We all know that, like, for instance, if my birthday's on a Tuesday this year, next year it will be on a Wednesday, okay? So that's how the Earth and the calendar, the 365 days in our calendar works. That's how the zodiac and the Pisces, Sagittarius, Leo, Gemini, that's the rhythm they work on. The moon goes on a 27-day cycle, almost like a woman's cycle, right? Seriously, that's a good comparison. And within that 27 days, there's 8 separate phases. So you have 8 separate phases of the moon on a 27-day span versus 12 astrological signs on a 365-day span. So they're both working towards the same mechanism, but they're on different beats, right? They're on different rhythms, okay? So the Earth moves into Pisces, not the moon. Technically, if you look at Pisces, it says February 19th to March 20th, okay? So to me, that's huge, right? Because of the use of it. Usually a waning gibbous moon, 3 of them in these 2 people's cases were crescents, not gibbuses, completely opposite end of the spectrum, okay? And he says, the day Nicola Bulley was found, this is the guy who found her, and the reason I went that day was specifically because the moon moved into Pisces. The moon doesn't move into Pisces, but you found her on the 19th and know via basic knowledge of astrology that that's the first day of Pisces. But you say the moon moved into Pisces to make it sound good, because if you look at the actual phase of the moon on those dates in real time, it doesn't add up with usually a waning gibbous and the moon moving into Pisces. It doesn't make sense. The moon doesn't move into Pisces, okay? It's a different measurement. I hope I explained that clearly, right? And 3 of the 4 moons were crescents. Then he says, the day I was approached by a friend to get involved in this situation. Becky, whoever this friend is a major problem. Now, is that Paul? Very likely could be. I've already discussed those connections, right? I'm not going to go over it again. Is it the lady he was with? My question is, if it is, and again, I'm not critiquing her, I'm not coming after her. I would want to know what her relationships are to Paul, Nicola, any of those families' direction to St. Michael's correlations. Does she know Becky? Does she know anybody else in the Lancashire Constabulary Police Department? Okay? depending on whoever this friend is, this friend here is huge. Was approached by a friend to get involved. Okay. Now this is the thing. I think he completely not know all the facts, but just hear me out. Listen to this. Paul, right? Scrambling, knowing he needs to do something. Okay. Knows Rothwell has a connection. Calls him up. Hey, bud. I had some dreams last night. I'm really having these visions. I can just feel that Nicola's trying to come home. Right? Not telling Jason anything, but knowing who and how Jason is, being a psychic, him hearing that, he may go and then proceed to search. If you listen to one of his videos, he says, I would ask the family how they feel, what they think, where they think they are. I think he's indirectly reflecting what he did with Paul in that situation. I hope that's clear. Okay? So this friend being involved is huge. Okay? And it's sandwiched in between these two pieces of bullshit. And I'll explain that. 2 of my fish deceased at the same moment. No disrespect, Jason. But what? For seemingly no reason. And I took it to mean that Pisces would be significant. And it happened to be the 19th. So I was out working on my retaining wall yesterday and I got sunburnt, looked like a tomato. This crossed my mind. What's the probability in the actual natural world of somebody being approached by a friend to help with a situation, which was Nicola Bulley? He then, by some power, is selected, right? And 2 fish are killed. Now, practically, what killed the fish? Because the probability of 2 dying in the same day, it can happen. But 1, 2, and for my practical, logical brain, it's hard for me to believe that on its face. So, is it psychic power where they, I don't know what other, lack of a better word, zapped? Because to me, he's trying to present this as he was approached by a friend, given the name Nicola Bulley, kind of like how he says up here, I sat with the essence of Nicola Bulley for some days, getting to know her. Is he projecting this essence is what was a sign and zapped the fish, like some mystical thing, And I'm not being a butthead, I'm just being serious, right? Because that's what he's suggesting. But I don't buy that, okay? Number 1, because the moon doesn't move into Pisces. I already explained that, okay? Number 2, usually a waning gibbous usually wouldn't be the word to use there, because in fact it's the minority, right? In these 2 cases alone, it only represents 25%. Okay? But practically, for 1 fish to die, and maybe whatever killed the first one killed the second one slowly thereafter, was something in the water. There could be a million different explanations. But he's putting it in the storybook of the day Nicola Bulley was found, and the reason I went that day was specifically because the moon moved into Pisces. The day I was approached by a friend to get involved in this situation. Ding, 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 ding. Who's this friend? 2 of my fish deceased at the same moment, for seemingly no reason, and took it to mean that Pisces would be significant. That's my brain. Really? Like, Becky, is this in the police report? Because he's saying here, the reason I went, and specifically, is because the moon moved into Pisces, which is crap. And look at the two moons, when she went missing and when she's found. That's not entering Pisces. That's entering 2 of the 8 phases of the lunar cycle. See, they're not the same thing. The moon doesn't enter Pisces. Mentions a friend encouraging him to get involved in the situation, and then proceeds to say that because upon being selected for this, or noticed for this, or being given awareness, 2 of his fish died at the same moment, and he took this to mean that this Pisces, it was the first day of Pisces, February 19th, would be significant. And then, hence, he traveled to St. Michael's and ended up finding her in the river. Are you serious? Are we serious? I mean, if you really wanted to sell the whole Pisces bit, I would have said, from my perspective, you say that the day she went missing's moon, the waxing crescent, would perfectly align with the day she was found's moon, a waning crescent, because if you put those two next to each other, that kind of looks like the two fish in the logo of Pisces, and then it being the 19th. You leading to it. Now, I can buy that. I hope you're following me there. Why? Because it's based on factual evidence from NASA that was the phase of the moon that day. And what I'm saying is, if you put the day she went missing and found right here in moon, I'll put them here and show you. That can be said to replicate the Pisces signal. Then I could see that as some divine psychic sign, right? Friend to get involved in the situation. 2 of my fish died at the same moment. That's the way you're trying to sell Pisces and it being February 19th. I think my version is a lot stronger than this one. And apparently yours is the truth. Right? Yeah. Let me know what you guys think about that. I hope I didn't lose you with all that deep astrology talk, right? So I'm not going to mention this here. Go off in this case. The signs and symbols that led me to that location were seemingly insignificant, but incredibly important. Like, he uses these word dances, right? A flight of starlings. A pig. A rose door, a green van, a shell to be found in an odd place. And I'll discuss the rest of this in a bit. Flight of starlings, I think that's just added in. A pig, in my opinion, I think why he was so nice to respond in this message was because I did kind of come at the police a little bit. And so long as I'm perceiving the police have some corruption, I'm playing into their hand. But see, this episode shows I woke up. Okay, and he didn't realize that I was in that process. I think this pig is meant to reflect a cop, okay, indirectly. You're saying, look, how do you know? Because I'm not saying, I don't believe any of this happened. Nor did 2 fish die. That's what I'm saying. Based on the science of this waning gibbous not being true, the moon moving into Pisces, I get it, but it doesn't make sense on the true knowledge of what astrology and lunarology is, I guess you can call it, right? Flight of starlings, I'm sure it means something in some way. A pig's the cop. Rose door, I'm sure it's got some connection to something. Green van, right? Like, this is a slap. Everybody knows the tip's a red van. Everybody does. In your brain, I'm going to ask you, if I say red, please give me an opposite color. Go. What color is it? Green. Why? Because stoplights. Well, at least in America, they're green, yellow, red. But I mean, some people are going to read this and be like, oh my gosh, that red van was close. Maybe it was a green van. We should go look into people that have a green van. People. He's literally taking something that a lot of people are feeding off of, flipping the green to get you to suck in to go, oh, maybe it was a green van. No, I'm not buying that crap. A shell to be found in an odd place is where I think he's trying to be fancy and make it sound all mystical, or some type of hint at the water, okay? So I say pigs, probably the cop reference, right? And this is where I'm starting to think that Becky's actually running an undercover operation, because this is indirect. And I think his whole response here, had I just been like, hey, I think the police are working organized, I do not think I'm getting this response. He thinks he's playing my fiddle, right? And he's giving me credit for the moon. Oh, you commented on the moon, and that was incredibly significant. Trying to get me to be the nice guy and feel good because I got something right. Guys, look what I found. I mean, I appreciate that, but dude, you built the narrative off of a suggestion that I gave. And then tried to use some stuff to say how the moon moved into Pisces, and you don't even have the basis of the evidence of those dates to back it up. That doesn't make sense for someone who's an authentic psychic, in my opinion, with all due respect. So I think he's trying to psychologically butter my bread, if you get what I'm saying. Sorry, buddy. I wish I could be more... I don't know what the word is, but like I said, I'm a good man. And with that said, consider this, right? My entire opinion is this whole message was sent out because he felt like he had to respond. And funny, he didn't even mention the 23, and he can't address all of it. In my opinion, it was all because he wanted to get this killed. No pun intended by that word. The mentioning of, he wanted to give credit to Michael Brooks's mom because he doesn't want anybody looking into this any deeper, right? I already revealed that that's the media's fault, and he even says that here himself. So they're using the media, Paul and Emma. But then he turns around, he's blaming him too. See, it's all a big mind fuck, pardon my language, but that's what it is. It's meant to get you going this way, that way, right? So here, the song of a dead rabbit. So he says, a flight of starlings, a pig, a rose door, a green van, a shell to be found in an odd place, the song of a dead rabbit, etc. The song of a dead rabbit. Does anybody know what that means? Apparently, the term dead rabbit was used as the late 1880s as a generic term for a young, lower-class criminal. So, the song of a dead rabbit. Are you, Jason Rothwell, the dead rabbit, and all of this is your song? That's what I think. And I think you're indirectly revealing that here. I told you a long time ago, maybe you didn't watch it, buddy, but I told you not to underestimate me. I can read right through this crap. All of it. Right? And etc. Much like Macbeth. Macbeth hath not... Okay. Macbeth, this quote, I'm not going to reread that. And it states that Macbeth, the lead protagonist in this, takes this literally and believes this statement offers him some security since trees cannot walk. But it is actually deceptively worded to make Macbeth only feel secure. What's Macbeth about? I know you guys are familiar with Shakespeare over there in the UK, but the main theme of Macbeth, the destruction wrought when ambition goes unchecked by moral constraints, finds its most powerful expression in the play's two main characters. Macbeth is a courageous Scottish general who is not naturally inclined to commit evil deeds, yet he deeply desires power and advancement. So, not to get all the way into the Macbeth stuff, but, I mean, look at what he goes from. He's going from, thank you, I really appreciate it, being so polite and respectful. Doesn't mention anything about the 23. I appreciate him validating that I did ask for permission, because I did. I'm glad that that's just cool. I wish everybody could have adult interactions like that. I truly respect that. I think this is interesting, getting to know her for some days. He says this again, polite and respectful for my beliefs. Like this, okay, side note. With the police, you remember in the interview he said, I'd like to give a special thanks to the Lancashire police for being open-minded to my beliefs that in the gifts that we mediums and psychics possess. So you get this image that, that's interesting, right? We're so open-minded and stuff. But look at this. If you watch my last video, I mean, I was nice, I guess respectful, but I did critique him pretty hard. Let's be fair, right? And he's oozing out with thanks for asking for permission, thanks for being respectful. So for me, it's like, well, it doesn't take much for him to say these things. So what I'm saying hypothetically is, were the police a little skeptical of him like I was? And then he responds like this? That's what that shows me with his personality in psychology. I hope I'm not losing anybody, right? I know this is deep. Okay? And then... So he gives these examples. right? And he says up here too, further dimension Rochelle must be another psychic. He doesn't really get too much energy off of, trees, reeds, banks, rivers, not exactly what I personally go off of. Well, I think he's saying that because in this case, those are the things that show truth. Like I showed my Marsh Farm Hall, the tidal flow. He said she was floating down the river, right? You can't go past the weir. That's why he doesn't want to talk about those things. Remember, he defended, it's not the lay-by, it's not the lay-by. Because those are facts of the truth and how she got there. Which, if he was out there just doing a stroll, none of that should be his concern. But he's making an effort to, again, what's the word? Craftfully dumb down the things that actually give credence to truth in this case. It's not personally he goes off of. Right? Like we said, the moon doesn't move into Pisces. That doesn't make sense. You'd think as a psychic he would have that down, right? Then he goes on to give these a flight of starling. I think this is all fluff. This is all trying to, because a lot of people, this goes over their head. He's trying to sound intelligent, really knowledgeable. Not saying he's not, he is. But this is craftful deviousness. And in Macbeth, there's a lot of witchery stuff. Which, not to mention, he quotes Macbeth, which is a tragedy. And about killing and seeking ambition and power. Not really a good representation. And then he sticks out the Song of a Dead Rabbit. Like, to me, this is him signing his name. Indirectly. Just like the 23 is that he never refuted. Right? I mean, why quote Macbeth and Shakespeare there? When in some of your TikToks you quote the Bible. I know psychics don't have to have a concrete foundation or strong point of perspective. They can kind of be all over the spectrum, but it's really odd to me. Right? It doesn't add up. And then he says, I would just like to mention Michael Brooks' mom found him herself. I stated as have been misrepresented in the media. And it's just crazy. In the Nicola Bulley case, you see articles insinuated and inferred that he helped find her, he assisted with, right? It doesn't really get too clear. But if you go back and read articles from 2018, there's no mention of a psychic whatsoever. It doesn't even exist. So, like I've been telling you about this whole media magic, then what would be the reason to say so now? I'll tell you. Because for Paul and Emma's perspective, the fact that he helped his sister find somebody previously gives him credibility. Nothing to see here, folks. It's a gift. That's what it is. And he's responding to this so you don't dig too far into the Michael Brooks case or get his mom speaking too much louder, because she rightfully should. And, I'm not saying she should. She needs to move past that, right? I'm not trying to reopen old wounds. But I think he's simply using it as a credibility lever. And I think that this is shredding it apart, because the psychic stuff I'm not falling on. The moon stuff doesn't add up. And then your logic of the two dying fish, I still want to know what killed the fish. Okay, let's say it was your psychic guidance. Can we take them two fish to a vet and get an autopsy? I know, obviously, I'm being sarcastic. But seriously, I want to know what the cause of death. I want to know what killed the fish. Because that's the most hard sell. There's no way. That's not reality. I get the idea. I'm not saying that can't be a sign for some psychic somewhere. But the way it's so fancifully dressed together, he's never provided this information. Well, he had to have in the police report. But however, he's piggybacking off of a comment I made in my previous episode about, the moon's, wasn't that interesting? And he's building off of it. And you know how I can tell that it's not the truth and that's exactly what he's doing? Because it doesn't make factual sense. The moon doesn't move into Pisces. It's not usually a waning gibbous. The moon phases from when they go missing to when they're found typically correlate. In both their cases, they're completely opposite. None of that makes sense. So if you think about it, he couldn't have used that basis to actually channel and find Nicola because it doesn't make sense. Like I said, he said the 2 fish died gave him a sign. And I'm saying if he just would have matched the dates and the moons, you can kind of sell that more as 2 fish. That's more believable. But he already said it. 2 of my fish deceased at the same moment. Like, this is straight from some Shakespeare crap. Are you serious? And why does it matter? Because he's the one who found her. And I think it's an even bigger reason because he's never revealed this before, but he's doing it to piggyback off of me. It's like I gave him exposure in my last episode. I'm drilling Becky for some corrupt crap. Meanwhile, they're smiling because I'm kind of onto it, but I'm so far off and there's no way. He's got too much lock and key into these police. He'll never really clear the mud out of his eyes on that. Well, I don't wear rose-colored glasses. I always make sure to look at things objectively, right? And as I've started to look at things more objectively and take this angle, maybe the police and kind of give them the benefit of the doubt once they understand the media, everything fits in actually a very practical, common sense, reasonable way. That's what's crazy, right? That's what's crazy. But yes, you only see him mention with the idea of being attached to Michael Brooks in the Nicola Bulley articles from 2023. It's not that it says he was found by a psychic, but doesn't mention. No, it just says he was found. So my opinion is that he was connected now because it gives him credibility. There's nothing to see here, right? It's kind of worked to a certain extent, but not anymore. And I want to show this comment, whoever this person is. Look at this. This has got to be divine intervention. The innocent have nothing but questions. The guilty have nothing but answers. That is pure wisdom. Like I've been saying in this whole case. Why is Dr. James Adeley giving answers without needing be? Maybe that's because he wants the speculation to stop because this is a higher up investigation, right? They don't want anybody revealing the stuff that I'm doing, you know? I understand that, but I think it's my responsibility to be fair to the police, okay? And encourage action to be done, right? By revealing things that maybe they haven't seen, okay? I try everything in my power to be pro-police, right? I really do. But I'm honest and fair. I'm not saying that they're not in on it. You gotta respect both sides, okay? And this isn't for content. This is for the persistence of truth of Nicola, okay? But with Jason, like, he doesn't even have to respond to this, right? I appreciate he did. But you would think it'd be a little bit more negative. No, he goes to elaborate and give us some more evidence, which I think causes huge problems. This whole idea of spending time with her in the essence, usually a waning gibbous moon. The moon moved into Pisces. The moon doesn't move into Pisces, right? See, and he says, the day Nicola Bulley was found, and the reason I went that day was specifically because the moon moved into Pisces. I'm going to take this sentence out. 2 of my fish deceased at the same moment for seemingly no reason, and I took it to mean that Pisces would be significant. All of that Pisces moon moving in the day Nicola Bulley was found, in my opinion, is all frosting. It's not real. The part of this that's real, the day that I was approached by a friend to get involved in the situation. That's the truth. But he's sandwiching it with the psychic mumbo jumbo. No disrespect to any psychics, right? If it was an authentic psychic type of thing, I don't think I would be able to cut through it like this. Sincerely, right? But so now in the Michael Brooks, he kind of reroutes, and I'm gonna try to wrap this up here. I appreciate you all listening. Thank you for bearing with me. It was his mother herself who found him, and I have never claimed otherwise. So again, it's the media, right? In missing person cases, I have been involved in 9. Now here's the problem. It is someone connected to the person who has then found them directly, usually over the phone by myself. In this case, I did not have that luxury. There's no way to track that. Usually over the phone. So how many of these 9 were over the phone? And I mean, like, I respect that. And that would be amazing if he has, because that's awesome. But there's no way to audit that. There's no way to check that. And 9's a high number. right? I mean, that's almost so high that why wouldn't he be used as an expert by the NCA? Like Faulding, right? That's what's interesting. But nope, it's apparently just random when his pets die that he gets these signs. Not to mention that a friend of the person missing asks for his help. That's the thing. It's Paul, which I'm saying Paul very likely could have just told him, I've been having this vision, like I told you. Maybe Jason doesn't know all the facts, and I think him providing all this kind of shows that he maybe not know the truth, right? And that's what kind of makes me worried, like, should he be concerned for his safety? Like, seriously. Because at the end of the day, this stuff is going to out Paul. And whether Jason knows it or not, he then becomes a liability. Right? And I always wondered, the guy who did the interview at Marsh Farm Hall with Emma and Paul, how he got hit by a car on his bike. I'm not saying it's related, but it's really interesting. I always get the thought, I wonder if on his way out of Marsh Farm Hall, Willow was running sniffing by wherever she was, and he made a comment, and they got all paranoid. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to build that speculation, but it's interesting, right? Over 9 this far, right? I didn't have that luxury in this case. And he goes, but let me just say simply thank you for asking me for permission and thank you for your politeness. I critiqued the heck out of him in that video, right? Isn't this an odd response? But I feel like it's because they don't want you to dig too far into this, or have like Michael Brooks's mom get an article in with something to really call him into question, which would cause the masses to really look big into him. Like I did that. There really hasn't been much digging into him publicly, right? So he's going to respond politely. I appreciate this and that. There's nothing to see here. The same motive, right? And then he flips the story. Like this whole idea of you commented on the moon, and it's incredibly significant. He took a comment that I had, and he built off of the truth of it. But the problem is the facts of what he's trying to say don't add up with the astrology and lunar calendar. It doesn't add up. Now, if it was the truth, it would add up. Because if that's actually what gave him direction and lines up, that would make sense. Then it should all line up, but it doesn't. Usually, that's an oversell, right? All these little gimmick things. A pig, I think that's a direct relation to the cops, which tells me that maybe there's not corruption, right? It's just more of a signature of this little criminal entity going on, right? And then the song of a dead rabbit, I think, is his little chuckle behind the scenes, behind closed doors. Dead rabbit being a young lower class criminal, which he would be considered. And all of this is his song. And then he quotes Macbeth. Right? Come on now. What killed the fish? It's an honest question. As I was going through the comments, I seen that someone had suggested, maybe this is some big psychological operation or some covert undercover thing, and Nicola's still alive and she's in a witness protection program somewhere over in the U.S. I thought to myself, can you imagine, because I'm over in the U.S., I know she's not out randomly in public, or would be. Because I would recognize her very clearly. If that happened, I would probably fall over dead myself. Not gonna lie. But here's the crazy thing. I think there's a higher probability of that still potentially being true than there is that 2 fish died when someone reached out to Jason because they needed his help, which then gave him direction, leading to the discovery of Nikki Bulley. I'm not being a smartass. That was my honest thought. I think it's a little more likely, not to spread all these conspiracies, but seriously, there needs to be some serious scrutiny put on to that angle, right? slowly chipping away at you, Paul. Slowly. But, alrighty, everyone. This one's again a little bit longer. Thank you everyone for your support. I know there's a little bit of audio problems there, and I didn't recognize it till I'm wrapping up now, so I apologize for that. And also, I mean, no offense to any other psychics out there, right? This is just in the context of this case and these words, okay? But with that said, I'm going to give a mic drop on this one. I think there's a lot of powerful information here, if you can hold on to me trying to get through it. But yes, I will be back soon. So until next time, everybody, mind you's out.